Hello and welcome to another episode of LaiTalk. I'm your host, John Yan, and tonight we'll be talking about our theme on career growth. Our guest tonight is not only extremely educated, but also well-versed in the field of data and analytics. Please welcome our guest tonight, Yi Ma. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. Our theme tonight is, again, on career growth. And, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Sure. So I started in College of Computer Science in Zhejiang University. Then after that, I came out to U.S. to do computer science PhD in University of Central Florida. However, I feel that myself probably won't be a software engineer because I feel that I want to interact with people more. I just feel myself probably won't spend all the time sitting in front of a computer and just doing programming. So at that time, I was thinking about what I need to do. Then my friend told me about the MSc program at Stanford. Mm-hmm. And it's a very good program for engineering students to explore other opportunities, maybe get you exposed to finance or industry operations and that type of thing. And I said, I think it's going to be a really good program because I know I probably won't be a software engineer. So I applied to the Stanford program and it got accepted. And from there, I got an internship at Facebook as a data intern. So after that, I just I did an internship at Facebook. I really enjoyed it, doing data analysis during my internship. So I joined them as a data analyst. So I spent 4 years at Facebook when they grow their fastest grow period for their user. And after that, I've learned a lot at Facebook. So I've decided to using what I've learned at Facebook, trying to help other companies. Mm-hmm. So that's why I decided to go to Square. And I spent about 1.5 years at Square. Then similar reasons, I went to Evernote. So now I'm at Evernote. I'm leading the analytics team at Evernote.
Fantastic. So, you definitely spoke a lot about your interesting history. And I think there are certain areas which, I think we can learn a bit more. Especially, you gave a good talk about doing your PhD at University of Florida, as well as going to Stanford. So, you mentioned that you didn't want to do a sheer computer science job or an engineering job, and that's why you went to Stanford. So at your time at Stanford, what did you learn there that really kind of gave you that opportunity to lead away from a standard engineering type job?
So I take a lot of classes when I was at Stanford. I took some classes in the business school. I also take some strategy classes at Stanford. I think that they're really, really interesting. To me, it's solving a business problem is just really interesting to me.
Right.
So I guess that I've got to see the things outside of just programming and computer. So I guess that's really, really helpful for me to think through what I really want in the future.
Great. And so, after Stanford, you landed your first internship at Facebook, right? So how was that like as a new graduate? You have not only your computer science degree, but a PhD on top of that. You have a Stanford degree. How was that experience at Facebook as a new graduate?
First of all, I did not finish my PhD. So I decided, because I know I'm not going to do research and I decided to quit my PhD to go to the Stanford program.
Oh.
And also, I think at Facebook, the thing is that I also feel like if I did not come to Stanford, I probably won't get the Facebook opportunity,
yes,
right?
That makes sense.
So, but it's also very interesting because I very appreciated my computer science background. Mm-hmm. The reason is when I went for the data internship, it's called data intern for the position, and actually because I can program SQL, right? Mm-hmm. I learned that when I was a computer science student.
Right.
So that, which means data analytics, that you don't have to be a hardcore programmer, but like, your technical skills in terms of understanding basic programming definitely helps you.
Right.
So I think that I really appreciate my technology background to help me get the internship.
Great.
Yeah.
And so how did you know that, with Stanford and going into Facebook as a data analyst, how did you know that data was where you wanted to go?
Well, so it's kind of like I don't know that. A lot of times it's not, exactly what I want or the, like, and back to the time it was 2008. I think the data is still an early thing.
It's very early,
and yes. And also like Facebook is a pioneer in using data, like, because they have a lot of data and they think that data is very valuable, right? They want to kind of like, utilize data to make decisions and kind of optimize their user experiences. So which is great. That's why I started without knowing too much about data. So I went for this internship, and I did a lot of interesting projects during my data internship, and I've just enjoyed it. I really I really enjoy using data to solve business questions. And that's just to get me. So I got the taste with my internship. I feel I love it. I just go in and do more. And also, like, I joined Facebook as a growth team. That was the time, as I mentioned before, it was the fastest growth time for Facebook. So I think that we grew from 100 million users to 1 billion users.
Wow.
Yeah, during that time. So there's a lot of learnings there, and I've just, I really just enjoy it.
Fantastic. And so with your time at Facebook, right, you went from a data analyst, and, I see here that you became a manager about 2 years later. How was that in terms of your career growth? Like, how did you drive that? How did you manage your manager? Like, what skills did you find were important for you to achieve that kind of next level in your career?
Sure. I think that, first of all, I guess I was doing a good job as an analyst, right? Like, you have to be a great analyst.
Right.
So your manager kind of values you. And also, at the same time, I think sometimes it's because Facebook is growing really fast. So which means the team is expanding. Then, like, if you're doing a good job, then that's definitely an opportunity for you to step up to become a manager who can also kind of like, grow other analysts, right? So that's how it turns out to be, like, my good work plus, like, the growing opportunity there. I think really about, like, the growing, like, I don't know, like, I think that really just proved that you can do it. And also I have my discussion with my manager, like, I think that even from the early days when we talk about what I want to do, so sometimes you will talk about short term, what do you want to do, also you will kind of like, talk about longer term, what do you want to do.
Plan,
yes. So I think that from early days, I talked with my manager about, like, I do want to become people manager at some point. So of course it depends on whether you have that opportunity, but I guess that's from very beginning, my manager keeps that in mind, that he knows that I want to become people manager at some point. So I started managing interns. Then I kind of like, manage it full time. Yeah, so that's how it's all get started. So
you brought about an interesting question, right? So you said that you were interested in becoming a people manager. So I think for a lot of engineers, right, they have this kind of conundrum at some point in their careers. Do they want to go into people management, or do they want to continue their career as an engineer? So how did you know that you wanted to become a people manager?
Interesting, right? Because for me, I told, like, when I was in school, I know I don't want to be just facing the computer all day.
Right.
I feel that I like to talk to people. I like to communicate with people. So I know that people management could be like, just people interaction. That's something that I'm really interested in. But also, I want to point it out is, want to be a people manager does not necessarily mean that
you're a good one.
Yes. So, but if you have that, at least I think that if you're interested, you should try it, right? Like, you should try it. And I know some people, they tried, but they don't. They eventually feel like, maybe that's not the right thing for them.
Right.
Right. So I guess, but if you're interested, the only way to figure out whether you are, like, that's the right thing for you is going to try.
To do it, yes.
Yes. And I've seen some engineers, they tried it and they don't like it, and then they go back to the IC. That's totally fine.
Yep. Great. And so, 2 years there, 2 years as a manager, and then, again, it says here you left to Square, right?
Yep.
So that's very interesting. During Facebook's most, biggest growth period of time, you decided to leave, right? So obviously I have to ask the question, what led you to leave such a, important role to go to another small startup like Square?
Well, yes. So first of all, when I joined Facebook, just give some kind of numbers there. When I joined Facebook, it was about 800 people.
Wow.
So apparently
really small,
it grew really fast. So 4 years later, it was over 5,000 people. Even though today, if you look at it, that's still small.
That's small, yes.
Yeah, but to me, it's just it's all of a sudden becomes a very big company, right? It's good. I would say I always love Facebook. I think it's definitely an awesome company, right? But also myself feels it also feels like a big company now, and I find myself really smaller company that I can make a bigger impact. Especially I feel everything at Facebook in terms of using data is very mature, right? After several years,
right.
The thing how you use data to make decisions and how product team and business team to make decisions really get mature. It's very you have standardized the process how to do that. But I guess a lot of companies, back to the time I said, because Facebook is a pioneer in the data area, so there's a lot of companies starting from that time start thinking about data, want to do more, want to use data more, right? So I think that maybe in other places, like smaller companies, maybe I can make a bigger impact. I want to kind of apply what I've learned at Facebook to help other companies to grow, and Square opportunity just came up.
Awesome. And so what was that opportunity, right? You went from, a data analyst, analytic manager at Facebook. What was that opportunity at Square that you had?
So I think that they are starting building their analytics team. They call business intelligence team. So I just joined as an IC again because there are a lot of times it's not really necessarily, I have to stay as a manager to make impact
right.
or IC.
Right.
It's really what the company needs, what you what role that you can make big impact there, right? So I think that a lot of things, they still need to work it out. And I feel that I can do a lot of analysis, right? As an IC, as a kind of a deep dive deep in their data to understand what data available, how kind of put a lot of analysis up for them. So I just go there. I also the team, because they decided to build a small team, and I talk with everybody in the team. They're just a lovely team. So I just love everybody. That they're data engineers. There are people doing ETL. There are people more focusing on analysis. It's a very small team. 4 or 5 people there.
Right. Yeah. And so again, we're going back and forth a little bit, but your experience as a manager and all the stuff that you learned at Facebook. Did that translate really well as you went into Square and that opportunity as an IC?
Yeah, I don't think it's because even though I was at Facebook, I was a manager, but I was managing a very small team. Actually, I think that 2 people was 2 full-time in my team, and there was in and out interns. So it's never a kind of big team there. And also, I always stay hands-on, which means I always do analysis. Gotcha. Even when I was managing a small team at Facebook, I always do analysis. I mean, personally, I do enjoy understanding data and finding out insights from data. Yeah.
Great. And so, again, moving on forward into your career, right? You said about 1.5 years at Square, and then you decided to come to where you are now at Evernote, right?
Yep.
So, what led to that kind of shift?
Sure. So, I guess in your career, it's not always everything's very smooth. Everything just kind of work out as you hoped for, right? So I think that I joined Square. I really like the team and the people there. I like them and a small team. However, unfortunately, our small team, the business intelligence team, get reorged into. I forgot. It's about 6 months or 6 to 8 months. Then the team get reorged into risk analytics.
I see.
That's risk analytics, even though it's also analytics, but it's very narrow.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. I think it's very important for Square, right? That industry, mobile payments. That's very super important. I understand that, but just under that risk analytics org, you just feel like the mindset of what I like, what I've been enjoying doing analytics is slightly different.
Right.
So it just feels like not always on the same page with my manager. So that's not definitely not a good experience, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So that's why I started looking again, and again, I was still looking for like smaller size companies, several hundred people, and they're starting building our analytics team, and that was the time like Evernote started doing that too.
Great. And so what is your current role at Evernote?
So I am leading the whole analytics team at Evernote. We are a small team, which is 5 people, but we're supporting the whole analytics needs in the company, marketing, product, partnerships, and sales, all of them.
And, definitely throughout your career, you've gone through multiple steps and multiple hurdles. How do you know that, you yourself are, on the right track and that you're advancing?
I guess I always want to go, so first of all, you have, I know I want to take a bigger role. I want to take more responsibilities, right? So first of all, I think that I have that goal set up for myself. I do wanted to make bigger impact. So the big impact is like, as an IC, what you can do is limited by whatever you can do.
Right.
So now you want to kind of like, so that you want to have a team. So because then it's kind of the projects that your team can work on could grow. And also, I feel myself really likes to do more breadth instead of depth. That's why I really enjoy the Evernote's role right now, is because it's touching a lot of different business functionalities, and we're solving different types of business questions, which I really, really enjoy. I think that the other way to think about it is some people really wants to go very deep of a
one subject or one domain,
particular area, go really, really deep. But I guess for me, I really care about. I wanna go like I'm interested in all kinds of different business questions, and breadth is very important for me. That's why I feel really it's not necessarily sometimes it's a very clear you're kind of going up.
Right.
It's just like what you really want to do, what's interesting to you, and are you moving toward that direction?
Great. And so, you were saying you're doing a lot of things that are like, covering a lot of bases. So from an analytics, data perspective, how does that fuel into, your business, like to help the business grow? So like basically, how does your research, how does your team affect, the ultimate business?
That's a very good question. I think that's also, I always view it as a very important question for analytics because even though data is hot, right? Like everybody's talking about
big data,
but eventually data serve the purpose to drive business outcomes.
Right.
So you cannot say, oh, I just want to see this data, or like I'm doing this analysis for fun. And that's not really, serving the purpose of why companies want to use data. So I always ask like myself and my team to really think about why we need to do this analysis, what business problem that we're trying to solve. And I think it's also, if you are working in this industry in analytics, that's super, super important to keep in mind that eventually all the analysis we're doing needs to be solving a business question. And also when we say that, it's like it needs, when you do analysis where you have recommendation, and we need to make sure their actions, their changes are happening because of analysis. Because we see this data, we see opportunities of how we can improve things, then we needed to make sure that happens. That also links to you have to work with other teams, and you have to communicate and to interact with other teams and work with them to make sure there is action taken to implement what data suggested.
That's fantastic. Well said. Coming from a product person myself, it's great to hear that you guys are doing that with all of your data. Just out of my own personal curiosity as a product person, right? How do you adjust for like data bias? If you are looking at a bunch of data, you're trying to drive metrics and business decisions. How do you make sure that is not driven through I forgot the term for it, but like basically data bias?
If I understand that correctly, I don't know like what do you mean exactly by data bias, but what I've seen before is data is a very interesting thing because when you look at the data, it could be exactly the same set of data,
right?
But people can use it for different stories.
Yes, they can interpret it differently as well.
Right.
That's kind of what I mean.
Exactly. So it's hard, right? Because so we try to kind of present what the data says, the truth of the data.
Right.
We can always like present that, and also that's why also another important things for analysts to remember is not just about data. You also need to come up with a compelling story, but more aligned to the truth of the data, right? Because if you leave the data to other people, sometimes they will just take the data for their benefit.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Use it not necessarily in the right way, but for their story, for their benefit. So I think that if we do the analysis, we see the data, and we can come with a good story, and also that story is aligned with what the truth of the data, that'd be really, really powerful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just now in terms of closing, right? I mean, we've gone through pretty much your entire career and kind of where you're looking to go from here on out. How do you, if you were to look back and you wanted to give advice, when you were kind of in school or a new graduate, what type of advice would you give your younger self?
Actually, a lot of things. I think that even though the career looks like, okay, but I would say I've learned a lot of things later on, and if I can go back, there's probably a lot of things I can do much better, right? So, for example, I think that even though I became a manager at Facebook, but I would say it's not I don't feel naturally I just become a better manager the first time. Like first-time manager always a little bit challenging.
Of course.
And so a lot of things that I hope that I can do much better. If I go back today, I probably can do much better. For example, how do you? Because the very interesting transition from IC to a manager is IC you do everything yourself.
Right.
You have your way to do things, but once you manage your team, other people might have
their own
different
styles.
way. They're doing things might be very different to you, right? Like you should not. Sometimes you should step back, not always look at the details, and it feels like it has to do my way, right? And just as long as they can accomplish what the project, then it's fine. It's just leave into their way. Make sure they do it right, but don't have to go exactly my way or his way, right? This is one thing that is sometimes I think it's when you first time transfer from IC to manager, you have to pay attention to that.
Right.
And also, first, because as IC you do a lot of things by yourself, right? You always think about that you can do, I can do this. I can do this, right? Mm-hmm. But as a manager, I think that you sometimes you say, I'm not going to do this. I need to prioritize hiring. Because your to-do list is never going to,
it'll never end.
Yeah, it never ends. And so you have to think about, I need to hire. Because hiring, interviewing, all these things takes time.
Tremendous amount of time.
Yes. And if you don't prioritize that time, you were just always busy to kind of fulfilling the requests and stuff, right? So I think that this is kind of a very, very important learning as a kind of first-time manager. Also, I think that from analytics perspective, I think that a big learning is, we do analysis. We spend, as an analyst, usually we spend a lot of time to do the analysis, right? But however, once you wanted to present the analysis to other people, we a lot of times overlooked how much time you're going to spend on the presentation.
Of course.
Right? Sometimes you feel that you I would say the actual time probably 80-20, that you spend 80% of time on the analysis, and like that 20% you don't pay a lot of attention. But that's really, a lot of times the 20% time to put it up as a nice presentation to present the results out is super, super important. Because if you don't do that well, a lot of the analysis don't really get buy-in from other people. Then that's kind of waste, and people don't really understand the points of your analysis. So I feel like really needs to spend it, because early in my career, I think that I like to do a lot of analysis and just kind of like, really dive into the analysis. But when I do the presentation, I just like, do simple slices, not always think about what's the compelling story around my analysis. And I think that's super important. I mean, I'm doing a much better job today, but I guess for this is something I've learned along the way. So I guess also communication, as I always kind of emphasize, right? Like especially when you want to grow your career, understand other people's perspective is super, super important. Be a good listener, right? Like sometimes people listen because they pretend that they're listening, just try to give opinion, like
right.
Wait until you give opinion. But I think that you really should listen to other people in order to get people to solve a problem. You really need to understand their perspective. And for example, for analysis, that you might think, oh, this analysis is perfect, it's really good, I think this is, but if you don't understand, but when you present to other people, they never speak to them because you don't know what's important to other people. Right. So you really need to understand from their perspective what they care, then you can incorporate that into analysis. Then later on when you present to them, it definitely speaks to them.
Right.
Yeah. These are all the things I think that I can do. If I go back, I probably can do a much better job.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think with that, that's all the questions that I had for this evening. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully all the viewers out there was able to learn something, and yeah, we appreciate you coming on site.
Okay.
Thank you.